My name is Connie, and I am 35 years old. I have been married to David for 3 years, now working as an accountant at a small firm here in Ohio. When I first met his daughter, Sophia, who is 17, I genuinely believed we would become a real family. Last week, I spent $600 on a beautiful emerald green prom dress for her, watching her face light up with pure joy in that boutique. I thought I was finally becoming the mother figure she needed after losing her mom to cancer 3 years ago. But sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. Before I share what really happened, let me know what city you are watching from in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe, because what I am about to tell you will show you just how far a 17-year-old can go to destroy someone who only wanted to love her. Let me take you back to the beginning, because understanding how we got here matters. Before David, I lived a completely different life. I divorced my first husband when I was 29, and we never had children together. After that divorce, I threw myself into building my career, working long hours at the accounting firm, and convincing myself that I was perfectly content being single. I had my small apartment, my routine, and my independence. Everything changed when I met David at a business conference in Columbus in 2013. He was 42, then presenting on real estate investment strategies, and something about his quiet confidence drew me in immediately. During the coffee break, we started talking, and I learned he was a widower, raising his 14-year-old daughter alone. His wife had passed away from breast cancer the year before, and the way he spoke about both his late wife and Sophia showed me the depth of his character. Those first months of dating were magical. David would call me every evening after putting Sophia to bed, and we would talk for hours about everything and nothing. He never made me feel like I was competing with his memories of his first wife. Instead, he made it clear that he was ready to build something new while honoring his past. He talked about Sophia constantly sharing funny stories about her teenage drama and how she was trying to navigate high school without her mother. I found myself falling in love, not just with David, but with the idea of becoming part of their small family. When David first introduced me to Sophia, I understood her initial coldness was completely natural. She was 15 then, still grieving her mother, and here was this stranger trying to fit into her life. She was polite but distant, answering my questions with short responses and avoiding eye contact. I did not take it personally, because I understood that earning her trust would take time and patience. Slowly, I started building our relationship. I would pick her up from school when David was showing houses to clients, and during those car rides, she gradually started opening up. I learned that she loved romantic comedies from the 2000s, that she was nervous about her algebra class, and that she missed baking cookies with her mother during the holidays. I made mental notes of everything she shared, determined to show her that I cared about her world. I started small. I would bring her favorite candy bars when I came over for dinner. When she mentioned struggling with algebra, I offered to help with her homework, since math had always been my strong subject. During one of our study sessions, she actually smiled at me for the first time when I explained a particularly difficult problem in a way that finally made sense to her. The breakthrough came about 6 months before David and I got married. Sophia had been invited to a friend's sweet 16 party, and she was stressed because she had nothing to wear. David was out of town on business, and Sophia was practically in tears because the party was the next day. I offered to take her shopping, and she hesitantly agreed. We spent the entire afternoon at the mall, trying on different dresses and talking about school gossip and her crushes. For the first time, she seemed to forget that I was her father's girlfriend and just treated me like someone she could confide in. When we found the perfect dress, a soft pink number, that made her look mature and elegant, she actually hugged me and said, "Thank you, Mom Connie." That moment sealed everything for me. I knew then that I was not just marrying David, I was becoming part of something bigger than myself. When we got married in a small ceremony the following spring, Sophia stood beside me as my maid of honor, wearing a beautiful lavender dress we had picked out together. She even gave a short speech at the reception about how happy she was that her dad had found someone who truly cared about both of them. The first year of marriage was exactly what I had hoped for. We settled into routines that worked for all three of us. I would make breakfast before school, David would handle dinner most nights, and Sophia would help with dishes while telling us about her day. We started traditions like movie nights on Fridays and Sunday morning pancakes. I felt like I was finally living the life I had always dreamed of. But somewhere around the second year of marriage, I started noticing subtle changes in Sophia. She began spending more time in her room with the door closed. When I would ask about her day, her responses became shorter and less detailed. She stopped joining us for our Friday movie nights, claiming she had homework or plans with friends. At first, I assumed this was normal teenage behavior. After all, she was 16 by then, and independence was natural. David was also going through a busy period with his real estate business, often working late or traveling to property showings in other counties. He trusted me to handle most of the day-to-day parenting responsibilities, which I welcomed because I wanted to prove that I could be a good mother figure to Sophia. However, this meant that I was often the one enforcing rules about curfew homework and household chores, while David got to be the fun parent when he was home. Sophia also started asking for more expensive things. What began as requests for name-brand jeans and trendy sneakers escalated to designer handbags and limited edition items that cost hundreds of dollars. When I suggested we should discuss these purchases with her father first, she would get upset and accuse me of being cheap or not understanding what was important to teenagers. I found myself caught between wanting to make her happy and being responsible with our family budget. The situation with the prom dress started 3 weeks ago when Sophia came home from school absolutely bubbling with excitement. She had been elected to the prom court, which was a big honor at her school, and she wanted everything to be perfect for the dance. She had already researched photographers, made appointments for hair and makeup, and coordinated with her friends about transportation. The only thing left was finding the perfect dress. Sophia showed me pictures she had saved on her phone of the type of dress she wanted. She had very specific ideas about the color, style, and designer. When she mentioned that her dream dress was at an upscale boutique in the downtown area, I suggested we make a special day of it. I wanted this to be a bonding experience, something she would remember fondly years later. Last Saturday, we drove to the boutique together. Sophia was more animated than I had seen her in months, talking excitedly about the prom theme and which of her friends were going with which boys. The boutique was elegant and expensive, the kind of place where each dress was displayed like a work of art. When Sophia spotted the emerald green dress, her entire face lit up. The dress was absolutely stunning. It was a floor-length gown with intricate beadwork and a flowing silhouette that made Sophia look like a princess. When she tried it on, even the boutique staff stopped to admire how beautiful she looked. The price tag was $600, which was definitely more than I had planned to spend. But seeing the pure joy on Sophia's face made the decision easy for me. As I handed over my credit card, Sophia hugged me tightly and whispered, "This is the most beautiful thing I have ever owned. Thank you for making my prom dreams come true, Mom Connie." In that moment, I felt like all the challenges of being a stepmother had been worth it. I was giving her a memory that would last forever. Yesterday morning started like any other Tuesday. David had left early for a property showing across town, and Sophia had already gone to school. I was working from home, catching up on quarterly reports for my biggest client when I decided to take a break around 10:30. I realized that prom was only a week away, and I wanted to check on Sophia's dress to make sure it was hanging properly and had not gotten wrinkled in her closet. When I opened Sophia's bedroom door, my first thought was that we might have been robbed. Her room was more chaotic than usual, with clothes and books scattered across the floor. As I made my way to her closet, I noticed that several other items seemed to be in disarray, as if someone had been searching for something specific, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found hanging in her closet. The beautiful emerald green dress, the one we had carefully selected together just a week ago, was completely destroyed. It looked like someone had taken scissors to it, cutting deliberate slashes through the bodice, severing the delicate straps, and shredding the flowing skirt into ribbons. The intricate beadwork that had made the dress so special was scattered across the closet floor like broken dreams. My initial reaction was complete shock. I stood there for several minutes, trying to process what I was seeing. My mind raced through possible explanations. Could someone have broken into our house specifically to destroy Sophia's dress? Could one of her friends have done this out of jealousy? Could there have been some kind of accident that Sophia was too embarrassed to tell us about? As I examined the dress more closely, I realized that the cuts were too precise and deliberate to be accidental. Someone had methodically destroyed this beautiful gown, taking care to ruin every element that had made it special. The pattern of the cuts suggested that whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing and wanted to ensure that the dress could never be repaired or worn. With trembling hands, I called David immediately. He was in the middle of showing a house to potential buyers, but when I explained what I had found, he excused himself and said he would be home within the hour. I spent that time taking photographs of the destroyed dress from every angle, documenting the damage for what I assumed would be a police report or insurance claim. When David arrived home, his face was pale with concern and confusion. We stood together in Sophia's closet, both of us trying to make sense of what had happened. David immediately called the police to report a possible break-in, while I called the boutique to ask about their return or replacement policy for damaged merchandise. About 30 minutes later, we heard Sophia's car pull into the driveway. She usually came home for lunch on Tuesdays because she had a free period, but today, her timing seemed particularly convenient. As soon as she walked through the front door, I could see that something was different about her demeanor. Her eyes were red and puffy, as if she had been crying, and she seemed unusually emotional for a regular school day. Before David or I could even mention the dress, Sophia collapsed into her father's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Between gasps and tears, she began telling him a story that made my blood run cold. According to Sophia, I had come home drunk last night after David had worked late. She claimed that I was angry about him missing dinner again and had taken out my frustration on her. Sophia told David that I had stormed into her room around 11 p.m., reeking of alcohol and screaming about how ungrateful she was. She said I had grabbed her prom dress and begun cutting it up while yelling that poor girls like her did not deserve expensive things, and that I was tired of pretending to care about a spoiled brat who would never appreciate anything. According to her story, when she tried to stop me, I had pushed her away and told her that I would never buy her another dress because I wanted her to be humiliated at prom. Sophia claimed that she had spent the entire night crying in her room, too scared and ashamed to call her father because she knew he was stressed about work. As Sophia continued her story adding more details about my alleged drunken rage, I felt the ground disappearing beneath my feet. Every word she spoke was a complete fabrication, but she delivered her performance with such conviction that I could see David believing every syllable. Her tears seemed genuine. Her voice shook with what appeared to be authentic trauma, and she provided specific details that made her story sound credible. David's expression changed from confusion to horror to absolute fury as he listened to his daughter's account. He looked at me with a combination of disappointment and disgust that I had never seen before in our 3 years of marriage. When Sophia finished her story, David asked me directly if what she was saying was true. I tried to explain that I had been home alone all evening working on client files and had gone to bed early. I told him that I had only discovered the dress this morning and had called him immediately. But my explanation sounded weak and defensive compared to Sophia's emotional testimony. David pointed out that I had access to the house in Sophia's room and that I was the only other person who knew how much the dress meant to her. What followed was the most painful hour of my marriage. David, who had always been calm and rational, became a person I barely recognized. He accused me of being jealous of a teenage girl, of resenting Sophia's beauty and popularity, and of sabotaging her special night out of pure spite. He brought up every small disagreement we had ever had about parenting decisions, reframing them as evidence of my hidden resentment toward his daughter. Throughout this entire confrontation, Sophia sat on the living room couch, occasionally adding details to support her story or correcting minor inconsistencies in my explanations. She had positioned herself perfectly to watch both her father's reaction and my growing desperation. There was something in her eyes during those moments when David was not looking at her, a coldness that contrasted sharply with her tearful performance. David's accusations became increasingly personal and hurtful. He questioned whether our entire relationship had been built on lies, whether I had ever genuinely cared about Sophia, or had simply been pretending to win his affection. He suggested that perhaps his late wife had been right to worry about him remarrying too quickly after her death. As the hour dragged on, I realized that nothing I said was going to change David's mind. His daughter was crying and traumatized, claiming that her stepmother had destroyed the most important dress of her young life out of drunken jealousy. From his perspective, my denials probably sounded exactly like what a guilty person would say. When David finally exhausted himself from yelling, he told me that he needed space to think about our marriage and what kind of person he had actually married. He said he would be sleeping in the guest room and that we would discuss the situation further after he had time to process everything. Sophia, still sniffling and wiping her eyes, followed her father upstairs, leaving me alone in the living room with the devastating realization that my marriage might be over because of a lie I could not prove was false. I spent that entire night sitting in our living room, unable to sleep or even think clearly about what had just happened. Every time I replayed the events in my mind, I came back to the same impossible conclusion. Somehow, Sophia had orchestrated this entire situation, but I could not understand why or how to prove it. Around 2 a.m., when the house was completely quiet and I knew David and Sophia were both asleep, I remembered something that gave me a glimmer of hope. 6 months ago, David had installed a security camera system throughout our house after a series of break-ins in our neighborhood. He had placed cameras in the hallway upstairs, the main living areas downstairs, and even one in the garage. The cameras were connected to an app on his phone, but he had also given me access to the system so I could check on the house when he traveled for business. I had barely used the app since the installation, but I suddenly realized that it might contain the evidence I needed to prove my innocence. With shaking hands, I downloaded the app onto my laptop and logged into our security system. The interface was more complicated than I had expected, with multiple camera feeds, date ranges, and playback options. I had to watch several tutorial videos online before I figured out how to navigate to the archived footage from the past week. I started by looking at the footage from yesterday evening, the time when Sophia claimed I had destroyed her dress. The camera in the upstairs hallway had a clear view of Sophia's bedroom door, and I could see myself going upstairs around 9:30 p.m. to take a shower and go to bed early. The timestamp showed that I had entered our bedroom at 9:45 and had not left until this morning around 8 a.m. The footage clearly contradicted Sophia's story about me coming home drunk and raging through her room at 11 p.m. But I realized that this evidence only proved what I had not done, not who had actually destroyed the dress. I needed to find footage of the actual crime taking place. I began systematically reviewing the footage from the past week, fast-forwarding through hours of normal family activities. I watched myself leaving for work each morning, Sophia getting ready for school, David coming and going for his business appointments. Everything looked completely ordinary until I reached the footage from last Wednesday evening. At exactly 9:15 p.m. last Wednesday, I watched Sophia leave her bedroom and walk down the hallway toward the sewing room where I kept my craft supplies. She moved carefully and quietly, clearly trying not to wake anyone. She emerged a few minutes later, carrying my fabric scissors, the sharp ones I used for delicate projects that could easily cut through expensive fabric. What I saw next made my stomach drop. Sophia returned to her bedroom with the scissors, and although the camera could not see into her room, I could see the light moving around in there for nearly 45 minutes. When she finally came back out, she was carrying something bulky in a garbage bag, which she stuffed into the back of her closet. But the most damning evidence was still to come. After hiding the destroyed dress, Sophia sat on her bed with her cell phone and began typing rapidly for several minutes. I realized that if I could somehow access her text messages from that time period, I might find evidence of her real motives for destroying the dress. As someone who worked with computer systems for my accounting job, I had a basic understanding of how home Wi-Fi networks stored data. I knew that our router kept logs of internet activity and that text messages sent through apps like Instagram or Snapchat would leave digital footprints. I spent the next 2 hours learning how to access our router's administrative panel and download the network activity logs from the past week. It was tedious work requiring me to cross-reference IP addresses with device identifiers, but eventually I was able to isolate the internet traffic from Sophia's phone during that crucial time period last Wednesday night. What I discovered in those logs was even worse than I had imagined. Sophia had sent dozens of messages to various friends between 9:45 and 10:30 p.m. last Wednesday. Most of the messages were sent through social media apps, but I was able to recover cached data that showed partial contents of her communications. One message thread with her best friend Madison contained the most damning evidence. At 9:52 p.m., Sophia had written, "Just destroyed the dress. Evil stepmother will pay big time for a new one. She is so stupid. Dad always believes me over her." At 10:06 p.m., she had sent a follow-up message, "Phase 1 complete. Time for Phase 2. Make her look like the bad guy. Dad will probably divorce her after this, and then it will just be me and him again, like it should be." At 10:23 p.m., Madison had apparently asked for more details because Sophia responded, "Going to tell Dad she got drunk and cut up my dress because she is jealous, then cry and act traumatized. He will totally believe me because I am his precious daughter, and she is just some random woman he married." The cruelty and calculation behind these messages took my breath away. This was not a spontaneous act of teenage rebellion or a moment of poor judgment. Sophia had deliberately planned to destroy her own dress and frame me for it, knowing that her father would believe her over me and that it might end our marriage. As I continued reading through the recovered messages, I found evidence that this scheme had been months in the making. In conversations dating back to the beginning of the school year, Sophia had been complaining to her friends about having to share her father's attention with me. She had expressed resentment about me making parenting decisions and had specifically mentioned wanting to find a way to get rid of me. There were messages about how much money her father spent on things for our household instead of just buying her whatever she wanted. There were complaints about me cooking dinners she did not like and enforcing bedtimes that she felt were too early for a 17-year-old. Most tellingly, there were several messages where she talked about missing the days when it was just her and her father before I had ruined everything. The final piece of evidence I needed came from a message thread with another friend named Jessica sent just 2 days ago. Sophia had written, "Prom is the perfect opportunity. Dad spent $600 on a dress, so he will be extra mad when he thinks she destroyed it. Plus, prom is supposed to be magical and special, so if she ruins it, he will never forgive her." I printed out screenshots of every relevant message, organized them chronologically, and combined them with the security camera footage that showed Sophia taking my scissors and returning to her room during the exact time frame when the dress was destroyed. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, but I also realized that confronting Sophia or David with this evidence in the heat of emotion would not be the most effective approach. I needed to think strategically about how to handle this situation in a way that would not only clear my name, but also help Sophia understand the consequences of her actions. I did not sleep at all that night, but I used every minute of my insomnia productively. By sunrise, I had developed a plan that I believed would teach Sophia an important lesson, while also giving our family a chance to heal from this betrayal. I was not interested in revenge or punishment. I wanted her to understand the real impact of her actions and hopefully choose to become a better person. The first part of my plan involved purchasing a replacement dress for Sophia's prom. I knew this might seem counterintuitive given what she had done, but I wanted to show her that my love for her was not conditional on her behavior. I also wanted to demonstrate to David that I was committed to Sophia's happiness even when she had tried to destroy my relationship with her father. I drove to the same boutique where we had originally purchased the emerald green dress and explained the situation to the sales associate who had helped us the week before. I told her that the dress had been damaged in an accident and asked if they had another one in Sophia's size. Unfortunately, that specific dress had been a limited edition, and they only had one remaining in stock, but it was a size too small. However, the sales associate showed me several other dresses in a similar style and color palette. I found one that was even more beautiful than the original, with more intricate beadwork and a more flattering silhouette. It cost $800, $200 more than the first dress, but I bought it without hesitation. The second part of my plan involved writing a letter to Sophia that would accompany the new dress. I wanted to communicate several important messages: that I knew the truth about what had happened, that I forgave her, that I still loved her, but that there would be consequences if this behavior continued. I spent over an hour crafting this letter, rewriting it several times to strike the right tone. I wanted to be honest about the pain her actions had caused me, but I also wanted to show understanding for the difficult emotions that might have motivated her behavior. I acknowledged that being a teenager with a stepmother was probably complicated, and that she might have feelings about her father's remarriage that she did not know how to express constructively. In the letter, I explained that I had seen the security camera footage of her destroying the dress and that I had recovered her text messages about her plan to frame me. I made it clear that I had concrete evidence of what she had done, so there would be no point in continuing to lie about it. However, I also wrote that I understood her actions probably came from a place of pain and confusion rather than pure malice. I acknowledged that she had lost her mother at a difficult age and that having a stepmother might sometimes feel like a betrayal of her mother's memory. I told her that these feelings were normal and understandable, but that acting on them in destructive ways would only hurt everyone involved, including herself. The letter concluded with an offer and a choice. I told Sophia that if she was willing to admit what she had done and have an honest conversation with her father and me about her feelings, we could work together as a family to address whatever underlying issues were driving her behavior. I offered to arrange family counseling so we could all learn better ways to communicate and build trust. However, I also made it clear that if she chose to continue lying and manipulating situations to hurt me, I would have no choice but to show the evidence to David and potentially to other people in her life who needed to understand her pattern of behavior. I was not threatening her maliciously, but I wanted her to understand that actions have consequences and that I would not allow myself to be victimized indefinitely. This morning, I placed the new dress on Sophia's bed, along with the letter while she was at school. I positioned everything carefully, so it would be the first thing she saw when she entered her room. The dress was even more beautiful than the original hanging there, like a symbol of unconditional love despite betrayal. David had left early for work without speaking to me, still angry and disappointed about what he believed I had done. I decided not to confront him with the evidence until Sophia had a chance to respond to my letter. I wanted to give her the opportunity to tell the truth voluntarily before I proved her lies with documentation. Around 3:30 p.m., I heard Sophia's car in the driveway. I positioned myself in the kitchen, where I could hear her reaction, but would not seem like I was hovering or waiting to ambush her. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of her bedroom door opening, and then several minutes of silence. When she finally came back downstairs, Sophia's face was pale, and her hands were shaking slightly. She found me in the kitchen and sat down at the table across from me without saying anything for several long moments. I could see that she was processing the reality that her plan had completely backfired and that I knew exactly what she had done. Her first instinct was still to deny everything. She claimed that someone else must have hacked her phone to send those messages and that the security camera footage must have been altered somehow. But I could see in her eyes that she knew these explanations were ridiculous and that I had evidence she could not possibly refute. As we sat there in tense silence, I heard David's car pulling into the garage. Sophia's eyes widened with panic as she realized that her father was about to come home to a very different situation than the one he had left this morning. She looked at me desperately and asked what I was going to tell him. I explained that the choice was entirely up to her. She could tell her father the truth voluntarily, or I could show him the evidence and let him draw his own conclusions. But either way, the lies were going to end today, because I was not going to allow our marriage to be destroyed by her manipulation. When David walked into the kitchen, he immediately sensed the tension between Sophia and me. He looked back and forth between us, clearly confused about why the atmosphere felt so different from the anger and accusations of the night before. Sophia stared at the table, unable to meet her father's eyes, while I remained calm and waited to see what choice she would make. David asked what was going on, And after a long pause, Sophia began to cry. But these tears were different from her performance yesterday. These were tears of shame and guilt and fear about disappointing the father she loved. In a quiet voice, she admitted that she had lied about me destroying her dress. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult our family had ever had, but also one of the most important. Sophia explained to her father that she had been feeling replaced and forgotten since our marriage, even though she acknowledged that I had always treated her with kindness and respect. She admitted that she resented sharing her father's attention and that she had convinced herself that life would be better if it was just the two of them again, like it had been right after her mother died. She recognized that these feelings were not rational, but they had felt very real and overwhelming to her teenage mind. David listened to his daughter's confession with a mixture of disappointment, sadness, and understanding. He acknowledged that he had probably not done enough to help her process her feelings about our marriage, and that he should have recognized the signs that she was struggling with the changes in their family dynamic. But he also made it clear that lying and manipulation were never acceptable ways to handle difficult emotions, regardless of what those emotions were. He explained that trust was the foundation of any relationship, and that Sophia had damaged not only her relationship with me, but also her relationship with him by choosing to deceive rather than communicate openly about her concerns. The most powerful moment came when David asked Sophia to look at the new dress I had bought her and really think about what that gesture meant. Here was a woman who had been falsely accused, humiliated, and nearly driven out of their family, and her response had been to spend even more money to make sure Sophia's prom would still be perfect. That evening, our family had the longest and most honest conversation we had ever shared. Sophia apologized not just for what she had done, but for the pattern of smaller manipulations and resentments that had led up to this major betrayal. David apologized for not creating better opportunities for communication and for being too quick to believe accusations without investigating further. I shared my own feelings about how isolating and painful it had been to be falsely accused by someone I had tried so hard to love and support, but I also expressed my commitment to our family and my belief that we could emerge from this crisis stronger and more honest than before. We decided together that family counseling would be beneficial for all of us. Sophia agreed to individual therapy as well, to help her develop healthier ways of processing her emotions and communicating her needs. David committed to being more intentional about spending one-on-one time with Sophia while also protecting our marriage from manipulation. As I reflect on this entire experience, I have learned several important lessons about family love and resilience. I learned that sometimes staying silent and gathering evidence is more powerful than reacting emotionally in the moment. I learned that unconditional love does not mean accepting destructive behavior, but rather responding to that behavior in ways that promote growth and healing. Most importantly, I learned that step families require constant work, honest communication, and the willingness to address difficult emotions before they manifest in harmful actions. Sophia's behavior was unacceptable, but it was also a cry for help from a teenager who did not know how to express her fears and insecurities in healthy ways. Our family is still in the process of rebuilding trust and establishing new patterns of communication. Sophia has been attending therapy for 2 weeks now, and I can already see positive changes in how she handles frustration and disappointment. David and I are also working on strengthening our marriage and making sure we present a united front when it comes to parenting decisions. Sophia wore the new dress to prom last weekend, and she looked absolutely radiant. More importantly, she thanked me genuinely for giving her that opportunity despite everything that had happened. She told me that wearing the dress reminded her that love is not about deserving good things, but about choosing to extend grace, even when it is not earned. The road ahead for our family will not always be easy. Sophia is still a teenager, learning how to navigate complex emotions, and I am still learning how to be an effective stepmother. David is still balancing his roles as husband and father while honoring the memory of his late wife. But I believe we are stronger now because we have faced our worst crisis and chosen love over resentment, truth over deception, and healing over revenge. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to face the consequences of their actions and choose to become a better person. The security camera footage that revealed Sophia's lies also revealed something more important, that our family has the resilience to survive betrayal and the wisdom to transform painful experiences into opportunities for growth. And that more than any dress or prom or teenage drama is what will last long after these difficult months become just another chapter in our family story. What would you have done if you discovered that your stepchild had deliberately tried to destroy your marriage through lies and manipulation? Do you think forgiveness and second chances are always the right approach? Or are there times when protecting yourself has to come first? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because I would love to hear about your own experiences with blended families and the challenges of building trust after betrayal. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with anyone who might be facing similar challenges in their own family relationships. Subscribe to hear more real stories about the complicated realities of modern families and how we can choose love and growth even in the most difficult circumstances. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from the most painful moments. May you find the courage to seek truth in your own relationships and the wisdom to respond with grace when that truth is difficult to accept.